Note: the audio track for this video was created 48 hours ago after the deaths of Philando Castile and Alton Sterling. The author of this video does not possess the abilities of precognition in terms of the behavior and reactions of people whenever state-sponsored deaths by the police occur. Thank you.
For me, at times, when I see a thing that happens over and over again, I see a correlating reaction to that thing. In this case, the thing being state violence, and specifically police brutality, ending with a murder. And the correlating reaction to police brutality that often annoys me is not the people's reaction to it being anger and the desire to confront the powers that be, but those who embrace denial and proceed to shame and self-blame either the victims or those who express anger at the violence committed by the hands of the police. And this anger expressed towards either those who are angry at police brutality or those who want to do something about it seems to be heightened when we see the actions blazingly laid open for us to see. And the facts of the reality that we are living in is no longer hidden behind lies or actions that took place off camera. When you see cops now, in even more detail, murdering someone, and then a year later they get off scot-free, that reality is that we do indeed live in a police state. Because from the courts to even the court of public opinion, the police are always justified in what they do to any of us. See, what I hate more than anything else, when we are under common knowledge of the fact that a life has been taken needlessly by the very institution we are socialized to obey, is the reaction of disdain for those who express anger, grievance at police brutality. And I also hate those who seek to question people who commit to activism that seeks accountability or to expose the blatant disregard of life in the case of African Americans and the police, the disregard of Black life. Now, because I see these two kinds of reactions all the time, ever since I was involved in community organizing against police brutality back in 1989, this hatred of those who express anger, and then on the other end, the scrutiny of those who fight for change, I may have made a misstep in last night's impromptu live stream when I went at Madhead's video where he attacks what he sees as fake pro-blacks, or rather the online Afrocentric community and their usual selling of wolf tickets reacting to police brutality, by then conflating the scrutiny or attacks on activists who work to protest police brutality that often comes up from people whenever cases like Alton Sterling's comes about. I knew he was talking about apples, and while I was pointing out that he was talking about apples, I wanted to also talk about oranges. But the misstep was that I added no segue, and I wound up conflating the two. People like Madhead's motivation is ultimately a silencing tactic. His pointing out the expression of anger or the selling of wolf tickets by the pro-blacks who don't do anything is really just a straw man argument. He will always talk about them as if they are some major factor in keeping us from justice, when in fact, if they are not about anything and are nothing but loudmouths, then why lose your breath on them? And if you can indeed make a distinction between these red, black, and green paper tigers and the quote-unquote real protesters, then why not uphold the work and encourage the people to seek out the organizations that are currently leading protests and actions? Why make an entire video to those who don't commit political action when you recognize those who do? I talk about Black Lives Matter. I bring up organizations like Another World is Possible, even though I may not agree with either of those movements on everything. I will talk about the general rallies or assemblies or even the urban rebellions and uprisings that come about, but I would never waste a minute talking about the loudmouths and the do-nothings. And I believe the real reason why Madhead does this is to make brownie points with whoever the fuck Madhead is trying to make brownie points with. And at the same time, he's too cowardly to actually attack the quote-unquote real protesters that he just so happened to woke up this morning and recognize as good examples that we should follow. Go to his shitty channel and you'll know what I'm talking about. The link will not be in the low bar. See, I suspect, and this is just purely conjecture on my part, that he wouldn't ever be part of any demo and would never be part of any of the movements of the so-called protesters or the real protesters, because I suspect that he belittles that sort of thing. He never said that, but I can guarantee you he doesn't believe in that. What people like him really want is silence from both the do-nothings as well as the do-somethings. Why? Because when we react to murder by the police, it will force him to call into question his own do-nothingness. I mean, how much energy does this useless breather of good people's air spend chasing entertainment on YouTube? Any guesses? What does this man do in his meantime? Now, over to those who attack or scrutinize Black Lives Matter and anyone else who tries to make social change. I don't think I have ever talked about them, and last night I wanted to, but like I said, issues got blurred on my part. See, I saw this a lot back in my day. You were out there passing out flyers trying to get people involved, and you would hear questions about who the leaders were of the movement that was trying to raise questions for justice for police brutality. And you were stopped in your tracks from talking about the real fucking issue because you got to defend against some talking point raised by the right-wing media.
Well, I know there is a person still floating in a pool of their own blood by the police, but wasn't your leader of the cause snorting cocaine in a diner some 10 years ago?
Really? What the fuck does that have to do with anything? You don't have to follow the cocaine snorting leader. Hell, if an action is organized, just show up as the "we don't like cocaine snorters, but we hate police brutality" contingent. You see, people like this are actually worse than Madhead, because what they are really doing is creating excuses, preferring to remain blind or ignorant or just simply complacent with police brutality. They feel powerless to change anything, but they hate those who vocalize their anger at police brutality and those who want to do something about it, because they know that their cowardice is exposed and laid open for all of us to see. Then you have when people bring up Al Sharpton. Well, let me explain something. Al Sharpton has been ran out of every anti-police protest and movement in the past 6 years. Stop watching Fox News and look at and check out what's happening in alternative and left news. They have definitely talked about this. Or the best thing to do is simply get involved in social change if you want to change police brutality. I mean, the thing about Al is that he might be able to get close enough to the surviving family members of those who've been murdered by the police to get photo ops, but that's it. Again, what does that have to do with you? You. Again, you. Then you have those who want to scrutinize the organizations and movements on the scene today.
Well, doesn't all lives matter?
Yes, all lives do matter. And I bet we would quickly see how all lives matter if Trump was suddenly beaten by the police. Read what the meaning of that phase for the movement means. Again, it deals with the historical context of the rate that black people are beaten or murdered by the police. And no one is giving a shit because the victim's humanity is never attached by both the media, and/or the politicians and the police involved. We will scrutinize their criminal past instead. If they resist arrest, while white counterparts can resist arrest and typically live to tell the tale, and all because as long as they are black, they are not lives to begin with. It does not mean that black lives are the only lives that matter, or that we are the only ones experiencing racism and police brutality. It's about the rate and ease of the taking of those black lives. No one has ever said that you have to join Black Lives Matter. Every protest and major action that is ever planned and organized in any city when shit like this happens, it's not just Black Lives Matter. There are coalitions. There are multiple organizations doing actions on those days and deals with these cases on an ongoing basis. You have to be part of it. And if none of those organizations in your local city or state have those kinds of goals, be that person who wants to make those goals. Nothing is stopping you. So yeah, excuse making. That is all there is for these people. And I tell my daughter, when you come across these people, when they're out there, treat them like Morpheus would tell you to treat the average everyday person in the Matrix. They are part of the system until they take the red pill of resistance. They are potential agents, and so fuck them. We have all the time in the world for those who want to wake up, but none for the angry, do-nothings. Keep it moving. If you want to commit to social change, then simply do it. But look out for the excuse makers, for they are another form of agents of social injustice. They make not only excuses for their own inaction, but inadvertently, they make excuses for the system itself to never be challenged. This is the Garage Autonomist.